Ladies and gentlemen, welcome here. Three Rivers Broadcasting's presentation of The Corner Kick. I'm your host, Alex Fidryshevsky, and for the next hour, we'll take you around the world of soccer, specifically North American soccer, each and every Monday, as we always do. It's great to be with you, and we're going to jump right into it. And for the second week in a row, we start off right here in our hometown, right in our backyard in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as the Pittsburgh Riverhounds have come up with another big signing. And last week we talked about Danny Griffin. We've got two to talk about this week, plus the home opener date is set. Why don't we start there? The home opener will be March 19th. At Highmark Stadium. It's a very early start to the season, but that's because the crazy World Cup year in Qatar, where they're going to play it at the end of the year, in all of its controversial handing out to them. And I think everyone followed that years ago, how it was one of the lowest rated places on the internal review to host the World Cup, but somehow beat the United States. Yeah, when we didn't have to build a stadium or a training ground or a hotel or really anything, and we passed all the social scores, even though everybody wants to say that the U.S. doesn't. We passed all the social scores, but Qatar got the World Cup, so whatever. However they did it, good for them. Qatar's got the World Cup. The last of the pre-expansion World Cups is going to one of the smallest nations on Earth. Nothing to see there. But anyway, so the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, let's talk about it. They're going to open up on Saturday, March 19th. That'll be Hartford Athletic. That's a Saturday. The kickoff time will be announced at a later date. They know they're going to open up on the road March 12th at Memphis. It's the earliest start for the USL in its history. Obviously, again, for the World Cup. The Riverhounds, as far as their season is shaping up, I swear, every day it just seems to get better and better and better. Since the last program, we found out that Albert Dikwa has signed a new contract with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. It's a one-year deal with a club option for 2023. Dikwa is now going into his third year with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. He's had, I think it was 5 goals since he signed prior to the 2020 season. So he had some issues getting his Riverhounds tenure started. He had some immigration delays because of the pandemic, and then he got hurt last year. He had 2 goals and 3 assists throughout 15 games, 11 of which he started prior to going down to injury. He's had an interesting career path as well. He went to Montverde Academy. He was a member of Cameroon's U20 team, signed with Orlando City, sent to the reserve team straight away out of Montverde. He scored a couple of goals for Orlando and then played for St. Louis before coming here to Pittsburgh. And it's another attacking option. He's a dynamic, really athletic player that you want, to add into the mix with Dixon and Cicerone. And as if that wasn't enough, when that happened, I'm like, okay, 5, 8, 11. I'm like, you essentially have the core of the team, as I said last week, is now back. The goalkeeper situation they still got to figure out, but you've got your back line, you've got your holding midfielders, and you've got your right wing, your left wing, and your 9 essentially all back. I mean, this is shaping up on paper right now, even with just 11, 12 players, to be a fantastic season for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, at least at this point, as their roster's coming together. All the key pieces are coming back. As if that wasn't enough, 2 days later, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds announced the signing of Jamaican forward Dane Kelly. Now, Dane Kelly is 30 years old. He is experienced. He has played in the USL for 5-6 years. He had a run out with Banai Sakin in the Israeli Premier League in the top flight in Israel, and he is also the USL's all-time leading goal scorer with 99. So the first goal he scores for the Riverhounds will hit him over the century mark in league play. And he brings, again, a wealth of experience and a host of talent to the Pittsburgh Riverhounds lineup. As far as the USL goes, And an internal level signing, this is about as big as you're going to get for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. 11 goals for the Charlotte Independents last year. He's played for the Jamaican national team a couple of times as kind of a spot player when he was having a hot season with Reno. He scored 18 for them a couple of years ago, and scored a goal against South Korea in a friendly. So I mean, this guy's got a pretty good track record, and he's traveled about the USL and took a couple of shots. He was on the books at DC for a little while, and then he played again in the Israeli league. So he's got some experience, and it's something that I think the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. It's just another, like, if you want to call it, say it's like a bullet in the chamber. I mean, you have Cicerone, Dixon, Dequa. Now you have Kelly. I mean, they're going to the table with a pretty stacked deck of cards. For the 2022 season. And again, it's January 10th. I was saying last week with Danny Griffin, it's January 3rd. Now it's January 10th. We've progressed a week, and now you've got Dequa back, and you've brought Dane Kelly into the fold. He was the MVP of the league in 2017 with Reno when he had all those goals. He was the Golden Boot winner as well. And when asked about it, Bob Lilly said, Dane is a top-level pro in the USL, proven goal scorer, and more quality to a very strong group of attackers. We're excited to welcome him for the 2022 season. That gives the Hounds 12 players. Preseason camp starts January 31st. You have to figure by the time preseason camp breaks, they'll probably be somewhere around 18 or 19, I would assume, at the clip that they're signing. If they're going, if they're going 2 a week, that's, you'll probably add another, 6 players by the time training camp breaks, on the end of January. You got 3 weeks. So, they'll be in a pretty good spot as far as the, as the roster is concerned. I mean, if you're just looking at this on paper and you're familiar with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and the players they've brought back, you had to be happy to begin with. But when you now add in the addition of Dane Kelly, it just the attack just gets deeper, and it gives Bob Lilly another option. It would also allow him to kind of really get creative with his offense, because he can now use Dixon on one side, Cicerone on the other as wingers, and he can put Kelly as I would assume the 9. It'll be Kelly as the 9, Cicerone out one wing, Dixon on the other side, and then you have Dequa coming off the bench if you need another attacker. And that's pretty good for the USL. As far as USL is concerned, that is a solid set of options in the final third of the pitch. We talked about the midfield with Danny Griffin coming back. Kennardo Ford's obviously is a major piece of the puzzle. Todd Wharton's going to be, back in the mix again. There are pieces that they still need to fill, but again, just to reiterate last week, very strong at center back, Jelani Peters, Shane Wheat, Mikhail Williams. Strong in the defensive midfield. You got 3 of them now, Wharton, Griffin, Kennardo, Forbes. They're solid in the defensive midfield positions. The attack is fantastic. It might be one of the best in the USL, especially as Cicerone can continue his hot run of form from last year into this year. And, again, to have him and Dixon and Kelly and Dequa as options, absolutely, fantastic. If you're Bob Lilly, you have to be very satisfied with how you've done thus far in the offseason. The only position that has no players signed is in net, and they'll find a solution there. And from what it sounds like, they're in negotiations anyway with some goalkeepers. I would imagine they'd be trying to bring Danny Vitiello back. But as the back line's solid, they've brought back the spine. I talked about last week, the spine of the team. The spine of the team is back now for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. And then Dane Kelly, again, fantastic addition, and should be the number 9 on opening day. And it's a bit of a shift for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, who normally we've seen the signings have been maybe a little more, if you want to say, obscure, or maybe a retread or something like that. Kelly's a proven commodity in this league, and he comes with some good experience, and that's really the punchline on him. And now it's just up to them to mesh this whole thing together and make sure that the returnees and whoever they do bring in, i.e. Kelly, can get on the same page. And as they always do, the Riverhounds will tend to build as the season goes on. I would expect that this season will probably start like a lot of the other ones. They'll get some mixed results, the mixed bag early on, because they're going to probably end up from the schedule. Usually the northern teams go down south early on. They'll probably start out with a couple on the road. They're more on the road than at home in the first month of the season. May not look so hot. Look at last year with Tampa. I went down there, played for what it's worth. They played horribly in the opener down there. They were bad. But by the end of April, you could see all the pieces starting to come together a little bit. And then by the end of summer, there they are just, battling their way into the playoffs. I think this team this year with so many returnees, the expectation from the fans, the expectation from the soccer media in Pittsburgh that will be there. And also, I think internally from the management, I would imagine, and from Bob Lilly, and from the players, the fact that they now, you've got a core group of guys that in the USL, there's so much turnover. These 1-year contracts that, it's just guys are in and out constantly. Maybe you bring back 3 guys, or it's late when you bring the core of the team back in because everybody's weighing options. Where can I get more money? Can I make a move abroad? There's all these different things they're trying to figure out. And I like what the Riverhounds are doing right now, whether this is Tuffy Schallenberger's call or if this is Bob Lilly's call, I'm not sure, but I like the idea of the 1+ contract that the Riverhounds are going with. This even Kelly is a 1+, so it's 2022 with a club option for 2023, and I think that's a step forward in the right direction towards handing out multi-year contracts at the USL level in order to provide more consistency, more stability, and generally raise the level of play across the board. Because when you're bringing in 25 new players every year and they got to try to figure out how they're going to play together and play in a new system and this and that, and do they fit the system, it could be 3-4 months into the season before everybody's got it figured out. And the quality suffered. Whereas if you're going a 2-year deal, and JJ was tweeting about this, my buddy out there, check him out, the Soccer Yank, my former co-host of the Corner Kick when we were on television back in Allentown. He was talking about it this weekend. He's like, man, the USL really needs to get on board with multi-year contracts. And I said, I think, we're seeing that a little bit now with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, who are doing the 1+. The next step will be just solidifying 2-year deals. And I think that's a logical next step for this league as it grows, if it wants to be taken, continue to be taken seriously as a viable professional option in the United States. It's going to be, a couple of different things that'll tie into it, but multi-year contracts are going to be one, because players are looking for stability. So are coaches. And I think that's something that management in the USL is going to have to get more accustomed to, that you can't just keep shipping out 20 guys every year and trying to build it back in on $35,000, $40,000 contracts. It means, again, getting your internal house in order, which I think we've seen the Riverhounds are certainly in order in, on the front office side, the increase in, sponsorships around the stadium and events around the stadium and offerings at the stadium, the amenities that they're offering to the general fans. I think that they've taken those steps to put themselves in a position where they can do this now, to say, hey, we'll commit. Maybe it's and I'm not privy to this information, but let's hypothetically say, okay, we can go to a guy like Dane Kelly and put him on a contract that's probably 25% more than we would normally do, or 30% more than we would normally do, and say, Dane, we'll pay you this. We'll give you I don't know the details, but we'll give you the $100,000 contract and give you the second, and we'll set you up where it'll be 1+1, and eventually you got to graduate to, listen, we'll give you 2. We'll give you 2 years, 100 a year. Again, I don't know what they're paying them. I'm speculating, but to use it as a nice solid round number. we'll pay you this 2-year contract. This is what it's going to be. As opposed to, again, a lot of these USL teams have spent a long time going, well, we pay this guy 40 grand, we pay this guy 30 grand, we pay this guy 50, and we hope that he's one of our higher pay guys going to stick around. Part of that's going to mean the owners are going to have to invest a little bit more money in order to stop that rotating door of players. And now, will there be guys who are going to be one and dones? Always will. There will always be players who are going to be one and dones. But for the core of your rosters, especially the ones towards the top of the table, I think if you have ownership groups that are a little less organized, in smaller markets maybe, where they don't necessarily have the funds or the maybe the attractiveness of their region or city to offer as a living space, compared to Tampa or San Diego or Orange County, or even Pittsburgh, which is a great destination city to come live in. Great place. I love it here. I'm thrilled that we moved here. It's a great city. But for the teams at the top, for those, your Orange County, your Tampas, your Pittsburghs, in order to really maintain that consistency and make life easier for the gaffer too, you start signing your top players, your top 10 guys, maybe your top 12 guys to, multi-year contracts. Do you get a 25-year-old and you give him 3 years? So you have him and he's at the level and can hold serve. Is it that kind of guy who you give Danny Griffin looking ahead, kind of a guy who you go to and say, Danny, we'll give you more. We'll give you 2. Because you've played so well for us for 2 years. Sit in for 2 more, then we know we've got you in this spot. I think that's something that the USL on the whole is going to need to start doing as they try to become more competitive. That's 1. Getting the front of the house in order is 2, and facilities is 3. Renting baseball stadiums is fine, in a short term, but these USL teams, if they want to be taken seriously, both by fans here and by, other, folks around the world, where they start saying, this USL thing in the United States, these leagues in the US are really starting to get their act together. They got to start getting into proper grounds. And I think, again, the baseball stadiums are great for now, but you want to see, if you're going to be a soccer club, be a soccer club. Don't be a baseball, don't rent a baseball, don't rent a baseball stadium. And I get it. Some of them are owned by baseball team owners, so they just double dip or whatever. But you got to start making the investments in the training grounds. And again, I said the Riverhounds seem to have their house in order. You see that training ground the Riverhounds are building down in the McKees Rocks? I tell you, that's going to be, like, I guess it's just out of that. It's in Coriopolis technically, but it's right there on the border. That's going to be something else. Indoor, outdoor, beautiful facility. Those are the kind of steps you have to make to be taken seriously by players, by agents, and just to put yourself in the right position to win. So, on-field, off-field things that the USL has to work on, and multi-year contracts is definitely one of them. And I think we're seeing Pittsburgh making that jump right now, essentially. It's not guaranteed the second year, but the club option is now out there to say, we want you back. We're going to re-up, let's re-up you for that second year that we have. Let's do it. Which I think is important. And it should be the precursor to solid multi-year deals. That a guy like Cicerone, who had a hot year, Cicerone's earned multi-year. Kelly, who's a proven commodity, he's a guy, where down the line you can go beyond 1+1. You want to say, not like, you're 30, you're the all-time leading scorer in the league. We'll pay you. You're here. Sign the deal. That's where they need to go. They need to go with that over the course of time. I think we should step aside right now. We're going to take a quick pause for the cause. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the transfer window for at least how it pertains to Major League Soccer and players departing the league, specifically domestic players departing the league. And then we'll touch on World Cup qualifying as that looms at the end of the month for the final portion of the show. So we'll be back after this on Three Rivers Broadcasting. It's the Corner Kick.
Protect yours and provide for others with the Polish Falcons of America. If you could get great life insurance and make an impact in your community, why wouldn't you? You can do both by choosing the Polish Falcons of America. The PFA provides life insurance and financial services while also giving back to the people we serve by reinvesting our profits into communities. If you're thinking about life insurance, it's time to think differently. Learn more by calling 1-800-535-2071. That's 1-800-535-2071 or visiting polishfalcons.org. Carnegie Ironworks is Pittsburgh's go-to for artistic, unique, and decorative steel and iron designs. We provide custom fencing, interior and exterior railings, outdoor fire pits, window coverings, and much more. If you can think of it, we can fabricate it. Find us on the web at www.carnegieiron.com. That's Carnegie Ironworks, for when you need it, for 500 years. Are you an athlete looking to take your game and performance to the next level? Gym Rat Performance Training is where Pittsburgh's elite competitors go to train. We specialize in personal training, strength, speed, and agility training, sports-specific training, and we offer the best basketball player development in the City of Champions. If you are ready to transform your body, expand your mind, and reach your potential, it's time to join the Rat Pack at gymratpt.com. That's GYMRATPT.com. Gym Rat Performance Training, punishing Pittsburgh since 2016 because rats don't rest. The Guard Market is a digital marketplace that provides customers with access to licensed security professionals on demand. Let's face it, you have a lot to do running your business, and security, well, that's our business. We take the hassle out of searching, vetting, and scheduling private security guards for your unique needs. Just tell us what you need, when you need it, and we'll handle the rest. Guard Market security service partners are carefully screened and thoroughly vetted to meet the demanding needs of our diverse client base. Using advanced technology, we match you with the most qualified service provider based upon your specific needs and geographic requirements. For more information, you can visit our website at www.theguardmarket.com and call Andrew at 732-266-9344 with your service requests today. The Guard Market, security on demand.
And we're back here on Three Rivers Broadcasting's presentation of The Corner Kick. I'm Alex Fidryshevsky. Great to be with you each and every Monday. We've got some big things in the work related to our soccer coverage here in 2022, so you're not going to want to miss it. We'll tell you a little bit more about that as the time approaches. Now, we wanted to talk a little bit about Major League Soccer. Season will be starting, just about the same time as the USL kicks off. But there's some big, newsworthy moments as far as transfers in and out of the league. Obviously, the biggest news of the last week has been the official closing of the deal for Toronto with Lorenzo Insigne, Italian national team player. Absolutely earth-shattering money as far as Major League Soccer is concerned. It is something, a number that we have never seen before. $60 million deal for Lorenzo Insigne. We're talking $15 million per season. It is a ground-shaking move. Toronto, they've been willing to shell out before. They overpaid Bradley and Josie. They paid Javinko, but it's funny though. I'll say this: they spent all this money on Insigne, and he did his groin immediately. They sign Insigne, bang, immediately gets hurt. But what does this mean for when he's healthy? I mean, it is a massive mover for the league that is desperate for big name players, because North American fans, they could care less about who the next 21-year-old they signed and sold was, generally speaking, unless they're American, or if they're in Canada, the Canadians. In order to put, and I've said this for years, JJ, and I've said this for years, there is a way to raise the quality of the league and become a selling league like they are, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with being a selling league and finding kids in Venezuela at 18 and moving them on at 21, or bringing Ricardo Pepis and all of these guys through and pushing them along. There's nothing wrong with being that kind of a league, but you can't command top dollar and then put out a League One product at the end of the day, because you have so many young kids who are on the way up, but you don't have anything there that's going to put butts in the seats. Lorenzo Insigne is the kind of guy who's going to put butts in the seats. It's a major signing. It's the biggest signing the league has had since the string of where they unfortunately Zlatan didn't hang around that long, and the league wasn't in a headspace, and I think still isn't, where they are looking at players who are 30 to 35. And I'm not saying you fill the whole league with them, where each team's got 20 guys that are that age. No. But you have these designated player off salary cap spots, right? You got 3 of them. It's in those positions that you have to have at least one guy, if not 2, if you want to put butts in the seats, especially in bigger markets. I think Red Bull New York found that out the hard way. And it blew, the whole thing blew up in their faces. Listen, I had an intern who was a sales rep for Red Bull after he was done. Won't say who, but I got the lowdown on what was going on when Kaku was the big marketed player at Red Bull New York. Don't get me wrong, he was a good player. I don't think his head was in the right spot when he was in New York, but he was a good player. I think he was maybe a little misused, and maybe they overshot a little on him. But the things that he was instructed to tell season ticket folks or anybody who had filled out a ticket inquiry, or when they were cold calling to try to get people to come back that had canceled, who had tickets with Henri Cahill and Juan Pablo and Rafa and all those other guys. The insanity that the organization in the league was telling them to say about how, while Bradley Wright Phillips and Kaku are not household names, we have led the OptaJack passing stats created in the like some line of malarkey about like why you should come to watch these guys and pay top dollar when a team that established itself saying like, we had Juan Pablo, we had Djorkaeff, we had, Thierry Henry, all these guys. And now we signed some 23-year-old that you've never heard of, but you should come watch him play because he might lead the league in passing chances created with his left foot from the right side. American sports fans aren't that dumb. I think they think we might be, but American sports fans aren't that dumb. And American sports fans want to see name players, I think a lot. They want to see a rising level of product, which you're marginally getting in MLS, but they want to see bigger names. That's kind of how this, works. If you want to fill your stadium, you have to sign a guy who's played in Europe and is a massive name player, not some obscure 24-year-old who's playing for some team in Argentina, who might be a good player, but you're going to overpay for him for sure. And I mean, listen, they overpaid for Insigne for sure too, but the payout on the other side is that when it's a league thing, it benefits everyone. Toronto's going to fill the stands every game with him. They're going to go to New York. There's going to be an extra 10,000 people that show up to the stadium at Red Bull. I can't believe I'm even in the idea that I'm saying an extra 10,000 people will show up to watch Insigne play at Red Bull when I was used to in my early to mid 20s, Red Bull, through my 20s, Red Bull Arena being a hot ticket that you couldn't get because Thierry Henry and Tim Cahill were out there, and the vibe around the ground was absolutely electric every single night. And now it's like a mortuary, and that's their own doing. But Insigne will fill seats. And there are certain markets that are where it's irrelevant. Seattle's one of them. Portland's one of them. LA Galaxy, you need more than you think. Listen, Chicharito was nice. Temporary boost. You need two of them in a city like that. LAFC, same thing. Carlos Vela. That got old quick. You need a second one. You got Vela. 2 years into Vela, you have to sign the next guy. Chicharito, 2 years in, you have to sign the next guy. Big name. Big name. Chicago's a dumpster fire. It's one of the biggest markets in America, and you have a team that is a train wreck. Absolute train wreck of an organization. Can't get out of its own way. But anyway, Insigne is in, it's an insane contract. But when you have to factor in that there are now massive money offers for these guys in the Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, willing to pay big bucks for these guys to come play there. Big bucks. And they're racing to raise their standards domestically as well. The Saudi League's always been pretty good just with the Saudi domestic players who generally, none of them play outside Saudi Arabia. They get paid really well. But they've shown that they're willing to flex their oil muscles in Saudi Arabia to sign guys like this. Qatar's doing it. There was a bump. I think that bubble's burst in China now. And not even COVID related. Because the bubble was bursting in China before COVID, and there were always some real question points of Drogba went there and basically told the media when he went back to Turkey afterwards, this is a horrible place. They don't pay you. They don't take care of the players. Don't go here. Layman's terms, but that's essentially what Drogba said. This place was horrible. As far as being a footballer. So the China bubble was bursting. I think it's burst now, and they've capped how many players you can have, how much you can pay them, because some of these teams were going so far off the reservation and signing players in their prime they were paying them $25 million, $30 million. Tevez, I think, had the same thing. He signs this $30 million contract. They can't pay him 3/4 of the money. You had to compete with China for a while. Speaking of Turkey's one of those leagues now. They'll pay the 31-year-old, 32-year-old. They'll give him a 3-year contract at $5 million a year still, because they can still bang at the European level. I tell you, when Thierry Henry came to Red Bull New York, Thierry Henry could have very easily still been playing in Europe, in the Premier League, at a major club, or in Ligue 1 or the Bundesliga or where. He could have taken one. He could have stayed over there. He was still electric enough. Same thing, Tim Cahill. Cahill could have stayed over there another 3 seasons. But again, to get these guys, you got to pay for them, and I think they've kind of realized this is the new market. And I don't think every team's going to do it, even though they should strongly consider it, because a lot of these markets are dead markets for the league. Dallas, thank God they have an academy and it funds the whole thing. I mean, yes, the owners are very, very wealthy and whatever, but as far as you look at the stands in Dallas, I mean, putrid attendance. They also built the stadium in the stupidest spot that they possibly could have. Took the cheapest land in the furthest point out suburb of Dallas instead of going downtown or in between Dallas and Fort Worth, but for what it's worth. And then they sit there, sign no players, and then wonder why nobody comes to the games. Well, there you go. Not hard. Let's get more on a positive note. Looks like not an American player, Polish player Adam Buksa could be on his way out of New England. They paid, I think it was $4 million for him. Serie B side Pisa are interested in a $9.5 million deal, so they'll more than double their investment, and then you add on the money that New England will make from the Tajon Buchanan deal. They did pretty darn well this offseason. They'll get about $7 million and 10% of a sell-on for Tajon. That's pretty good. If they can move Buxa and that, as far as New England's concerned, $15 million into the pocket of one of the wealthiest owners in Major League Soccer, who does absolutely jack to invest in it. But, that's a good offseason for them. Find a stadium, Bob. Anyway, that's kind of a piece of business worth looking at. Also, Charlotte has not played a game in MLS, yet they've made money now. They signed an Australian named Riley McGree, who is one of their better prospects in Australia. They signed him to a deal. It was like the way they signed him up, they loaned him, and he was in Birmingham. They got him from Adelaide United and loaned him to Birmingham. Not Birmingham, USL Birmingham, Birmingham in England. Maybe I should say that way. Birmingham, Alabama, Birmingham in England. And now he's going to Celtic for about $3 million, and there could be another $1 to $2 million for him, and he didn't play 1 minute in MLS. That was just a good piece of business by the league and the scouting team at the Charlotte office to say, we should sign him and move him. He'll probably never play for us, but we can make money. Well, they did their job. Now, for a more American feel, James Sands' loan has been completed to Rangers. It was looking like it was originally possibly going to be a sale. It's an 18-month loan with an option to purchase. So Sands has a year and a half to show himself up in the Scottish Prem, which I talked about last week. Good league, top heavy, bottom weak. Bottom of MLS is better than the bottom of the Scottish League. But the top of the Scottish League is better than the top of MLS. Like your Celtic Rangers are better than what you're going to get in Major League Soccer. And the reason you take the loan to Rangers, even though the league is probably a lateral move, it's the access to Champions League and Europa League that he will be able to now showcase himself in. And he's going to go to a massive club and have a serious opportunity. Rangers are in the Europa League in the knockout stage. They take on Dortmund next month, and they're atop the Scottish Prem. So for Sands, what a great time to go in. He's got the opportunity now to go in and try to fight for a place in the lineup going into the Europa League knockout stages against Dortmund. I mean, what a better way to start off and showcase your tenure in Europe than to go over and jump into the Europa League knockout stages. I mean, unless you're going to go to the Champions League knockout stages, it's the only way you could get better. So it's a great opportunity for Sands to go to a historic, big-time club. He's now the third Citizen Academy kid to go. Gio Reyna spent a lot of his early days there when his father was helping build the club. He's a Dortmund. Joe Scally to Mönchengladbach. And I said Sands was going to be the next one. Will Rangers purchase him, or will he end up somewhere else? Because he's in the City Football Group family that is a very well-connected network. That remains to be seen, but an 18-month loan to Rangers for James Sands is, it's a good move. It's a good big move for him, and it's just another one of the major departures from Major League Soccer in the winter that I think is beneficial to the U.S. national team player pool. Daryl Dike going to West Brom is another one. We talked about that at the beginning of the year. Mentioned it last year because he had signed it so early. Chris Mueller from Orlando goes to Hibernian in Scotland on a free transfer. Now, Mueller's probably not breaking into the national team with the type of players that we have, but I give him credit for going to try something different. Yet he probably could have had a very nice contract in MLS if he stayed in Orlando and re-upped there or went somewhere else. But going to test his mettle at the Scottish Prem, he's going to Hibs, and Hibs is another one of those big time, Scottish teams with a lot of tradition. They're not at their level of Rangers and Celtic, but again, another good move for an American. Richie Laryea, Canadian right back, played for Toronto, was offered a contract extension to become the highest paid outside back in Major League Soccer. Ended up going to Nottingham Forest instead. So he turns that deal down and is going to go and take his talents over to to a little bit of a higher level. There's some good things that have gone on this winter. I mean, Kyle Duncan went back to Europe, started out in Europe, came to Red Bull to try to find his feet. He's going to the Belgian league now. So there's been some good, again, I know it's kind of broad generalizations, but just some good player movement for the good young Americans and the Canadians too. Because again, we're talking about kind of North America here, and got to start talking a little bit more about Liga MX as well. And as we get closer to the World Cup qualifiers, I want to talk about things that are going on here that have allowed the United States and Canada to catch up and are right on the cusp of blowing past the Mexican national team. And we'll talk about that again as we get closer to the qualifiers. But just really good transfers in the winter window. Sam Vines, he left in the summer. He's now out at Antwerp. The player exodus of Americans to Europe is on in large numbers now, and the interest in American players is now there from European clubs in even larger numbers than it's probably ever been, and it's only going to get bigger as the academies continue to get larger and more investment and churn out better and more talent. Ricardo Pepi, obviously going to Augsburg is another massive move, and for the U.S. national team, it's just a massive benefit for the national team. And I've used that term "massive" a lot right now, but it is, just from a player development standpoint, and as it pertains to the national team. And in that respect, MLS is doing its job. As critical as I am of the league, the academy system, which MLS has now established at all of its teams and is going to continue to establish at all the teams that will come into the league, because they ain't stopping at 30. They're going to, the Garber, we're done at 30. When the next investor comes in from Cleveland or wherever the hell they're going to go next, Milwaukee or maybe it's Pittsburgh or whatever, and says, that last contract, they paid, was it $300 million or whatever to get the franchise? We'll pay you $500. But Don Garber not saying no. They're not going to say no to that. So they won't stop at 30. There's so much demand for professional soccer across the entire country that MLS could hit 40, 20 in each conference. I could see it. And the USL, forget it. USL is going to be on its way to 80 to 100 teams, professional teams, in probably a decade. You could go to the Wikipedia page. They have the list of the USL markets that are going to be coming in over the next 2 years. I mean, it's just the leagues, the USL with its championship and their two professional leagues it's just exploding. And all of them are now, this is an even deeper conversation about academies. So again, I'm saying MLS did its job. An even deeper conversation to have as the Riverhounds are building this first-class facility. Let's bring it back here to Pittsburgh. The way this generally works, you build your academy, you get the house in order with your academy coaches, you create a path to the first team. 10 years later, the 8-year-olds are the ones who you see the first results with. There will be kids who pass through who will be very good players. Many of them will go play Division I soccer as a result of playing in an academy like that. But the professional level results come 10 years after you start your academy. Lech Poznań saw that. Legia Warsaw saw it and then walked away from it for whatever reason, because they were trying to battle in Champions League, and then they made about 3 years worth of bad signings, and now, much to my joy, they're horrible. But let's take Poland for an example. Lech Poznań built its residency academy 10 years ago. It's over 10 years ago, but when they built it, it was 10 years before it became this churn. 3 players a year, 4 players a year that they were able to bring into the first team and move out on sales. I think we saw it in Major League Soccer, Philadelphia Union. They're right about 10. Dallas is right about 10. New York Red Bulls, right about 10. As far as really formalizing their academies. Look at what Dallas has done moving players. Red Bull went sideways over the last 2 years with their signings, but their academy players have still pushed through, some of them. And I think they're kind of hitting the reset button. We saw the USL team this year, 15, 14, 16. I mean, they put a high school team out there against the Riverhounds, and it held their own. So I think the academy system of the United States is going to help push them very rapidly beyond Liga MX and the Mexican national team, and it's going to be on volume because our second division and the academies in the second division here in the United States will have more investment available than the Mexican teams will, and far more than the rest of CONCACAF. Canada will continue to grow. They'll hold serve. Specifically, as the Canadian Premier League continues to grow, they keep adding more teams. They're going to start academies very similar to us, and it'll be more than just Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver supplying their national team pool talent, and slipping some dual nationals in there who are born Canadian by family or whatever, and mom's from Canada, was born in England kind of thing. Though Edmonton, Alphonso Davies, but the more they have, the more investment they'll make, and I don't see that in Mexico. And Mexico just cut off the legs of promotion and relegation for a while, which I think that's going to hurt their second division big time. And it's going to cut off avenues in the academies at those teams for a lot of the kids in some of the smaller to mid-sized Mexican cities. Whereas in the United States, listen, Pittsburgh's going to open let's talk about the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. The academy is going to have this beautiful home. The first team's going to have this beautiful home down there in Coriopolis. And you pull all the pieces together, and like I said, 10 years. So 20, you open it this year, 2030-ish. They really formalized their academy. I guess it was about 5 years ago now, where they really kind of were like, okay, we're going to get our act together with this youth group here. So somewhere around 2025 to 2030, you'll start to see the real big results from them. And this facility will only help because it'll make it more attractive than other organizations in Western Pennsylvania. And as it should be at this point, if you're a parent of a top player, Pittsburgh Riverhounds Academy is the place to be. And I'll say this too. They're not paying us to say this. It's not like the Riverhounds are, a paying sponsor and I'm just chilling for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds here. It's not like we're getting paid to say that. That is my honest opinion as an analyst. That if you're a parent of a top soccer player in Western Pennsylvania, you got to go there now. Boy or girl, you got to go there now. With the path forward, and especially if you have a boy, with the path to pro that the USL is trying to create, and is now a lot of USL teams are starting to bring academy players into the first team. I mean, or utilize the amateurism thing they set up. Borso was the first one the Riverhounds did. Who's a high school kid that they were able to bring in and get training and time for, and saw a couple of matches as a 17-year-old. So these places will help drive forward the national teams of the U.S. and Canada in a way that, again, I just don't see how Mexico's going to keep up. It's just based on size. I mean, U.S. 350 million people. You get to a point where you got 30 teams plus. If MLS keeps growing, USL's going to hit, again, they'll hit 60 to 80 to 100 teams at some point. If you have 100 academies that are down at that level, plus the elite MLS academies that are, 30 or 40 of them, good luck. You'd be churning out players left and right. And we're starting to. I think you're starting to see it, that it's a deep player pool. And some of the guys aren't going to leave either. Some of them they'll get paid. They'll just be really good MLS players. But the idea of turning out more than just one Christian Pulisic, every 30 years, it's the idea that now you look at our attack, we've got 20 guys. And the Canadians are catching up fast, where they've gone from, a cycle ago where it was like, well, we got Cavallini and to St. Ricketts, who's got some European experience. And, well, hell, what are we going to do now if one of them can't play, we've got 15 young attackers. Canada's still got to catch up defensively. I say this every week. Canada's still got to catch up. Canada still has to catch up on the defensive side of development. The U.S. is ahead of them there. Mexico's still ahead of them there. Canada's getting better, but that is still their weak point. And as we look into World Cup qualifying, January 27th and 30th, you got Canada playing. The United States obviously will be playing at the end of the month. They're in Columbus against El Salvador on the 27th. Canada in Hamilton, Ontario on the 30th. Honduras in St. Paul, Minnesota. And that's how you frickin' do it. Honduras makes these teams play at 3 in the afternoon. They make it a national holiday the night before. There's 50,000 people outside of the hotel that the other team's staying in, and they're playing drums and having a great party. So the team doesn't sleep, and they play the game at 3 in the afternoon. So it's 150 degrees on the field, and it's 100% humidity, and you're 7,000 feet above sea level. And yeah, they try to wilt you. So the least the U.S., and I've said this for years, and they haven't done it, and they're finally doing it. The least the U.S. and Canada can do to Honduras and El Salvador and Costa Rica and all these other national teams with their gamesmanship of like, we're going to play the game and we're going to move it to 3 in the afternoon. Thankfully, I think TV's put a stop to that too. But like, I remember Honduras playing Canada. Game was supposed to be at 8 o'clock, and then they like a week out, they're like, no, we're going to play at 2 in the afternoon. The least you could do for payback, because payback's is send them to Edmonton in January when it's minus 16 for kickoff. And St. Paul will be about, February 2nd in St. Paul. It'll be about 5 degrees that night. That's how you do it. And again, we're getting in, we'll be into World Cup qualifying. The squad should be named. My guess is 27th. This week, by the end of this week, we should know. That'll be about 10 days out for travel and everybody. We should know probably by the end of this week, if not the weekend, who will be on the U.S. and Canadian squads. I think the Canadian squad's a little more solid as far as who it's going to be than the United States. I think you can effectively and efficiently ascertain up front for Canada in the player pool will be, again, barring anybody getting hurt last minute or, taking knocks, things like that, you'd be looking at Cavallini, Tejan, Kyle Aaron, Davies, David Miller, maybe Ugbo, who they called in the last go-around from Genk, could be in there. And that's probably going to be your lineup. There's maybe 3 other guys in the attack that they could look at that I don't think they're gonna, but they could potentially look at. Same thing in the midfield. It's going to be Piet. It's going to be Eustachio. It's going to be Jonathan Osorio, Mark Anthony Kaye, Thibaut Hutchinson, and maybe 1 or 2 others in the middle of the park. Maybe I don't even want to say maybe a Junior Hoyle. It just depends. Maybe 1 or 2 others. Same thing in the back. The back line set. Again, barring anybody taking a knock, it's Johnston, Atakubi, Miller, Vittoria, Daniil Henry, Larea, Derek Cornelius. Done. Same thing in net for them. Pantami, Crepeau, Borjan. Like, the Canadian team is pretty simple to figure out still. The depth is building. The first 20-something is now there for them. The U.S. is a little pickier. It's a little trickier because you never know who's going to get called in. Now, with MLS coming out of an off season and into a quick season, I imagine these guys are trying to maintain their fitness. You could get a Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman, Christian Roldan, Sebastian Lletget, Kellen Acosta group in there. You could see that. I could see those 5. Turner Johnson. You could get some kind of combination there. And then the player pool, there's probably 18 that are locked in. And then there's a fight for the last, maybe 20 are locked in, and it's a fight for the last 8 spots. Who's it going to be? It's going to be, do your Matthew Hoppies get called in, or those type of players, Josh Sargents, and why P-Fox not in the national team and hasn't been for the last 2 clips of the cycle. I don't know what Berhalter doesn't see in him, but he's good enough to score against Manchester United in Champions League, but and score hat tricks in the Swiss League. But we need Giassi Zardes. Should be moving on from him. Probably be in the squad though. Wouldn't be surprised if Zardes, Ariola, and Puppy Dog Boy are in the squad there. For those of you who don't know, that's right. You're new to us, and this is new for relatively speaking in Pittsburgh. But if you followed us back in the Lehigh Valley, Puppy Dog Boy is Jordan Morris. And Jordan Morris stayed home because mommy got him a puppy dog. That's actually what happened. I believe his girlfriend and him bought a dog, and that was one of the driving points why he didn't go to Europe out of Stanford. Listen, when Jordan Morris is on his game, is he a fringe national team player? B team. At this point, 27 years old, B team. He's a Gold Cup guy. Paul Ariola is a Gold Cup guy. Giassi Zardes is a Gold Cup guy. Lletget, Acosta, and Roldan aren't. They're A-team guys. And the problem, I've said this before, my biggest beef with Kellen Acosta, if Kellen Acosta could bring it mentally every day for the U.S. national team, and for the club, when he's playing for Colorado, Kellen Acosta would be a starter at a Champions League team. The problem is he only brings it once every 10 games. Thankfully, the last few qualifiers, he's been on his A-plus game. Roldan's done the job too. And I always thought Roldan was one of those guys who I always figured he would be good enough to leave MLS, but he never would. Because he has a great spot. He's in his home, kind of, if you will. He went to Washington. He's from California. He went to Washington. He's been there for over 10 years at this point. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, he's good enough, but is he a starter at the top level where it's impactful for the national team, or should he just be that guy who can float between B team starter and A team backup? Because we have Adams, Musa, Busio, McKennie, De La Torre, all these other guys, Tessman, who are Odasawi, prospect after prospect. You just name them in the middle, in the midfield that are going and are over there. So the U.S. team's going to be a little more interesting to fill out. Also, watch George Bello. There's interest that Watford may sign George Bello in the winter. I think in this month window, there could be a couple other Americans who may still make a move. But when I look at, again, I'm on the Wikipedia right now. You look at who's over there, and you start looking at the list of who, the national team pool, who could go. Goalkeeper Gabriel Swanina from Chicago won't be in Chicago for long. He's 17 years old. U.S. national team U20 pool now 6'4". Swanina will be he'll be gone. Miles Robinson's at that now or never, and the interest is now there. There are multiple clubs in Europe. If it's not in the winter, it'll probably be in the summer. George Bello, same thing. There's a few other guys who probably won't go that are in and around poking about, like Georgi Mihailovic. Cole Bassett will be one also. Jesus Ferreira will be one. But I could sit here and pluck that out. Maybe we'll do that in an article, because we have to bring that tradition back. We used to post the article of the Yanks that need to move. Well, the pool's so deep now. Maybe it's a little bit different. It won't be like, hey, everybody needs to go. But we missed an entire generation of it. But we have a solid group of players in Europe right now who are just all over the place, and I think that's good. Listen, MLS serves its purpose. It's a great place to grow. It's a great place to build the B team out of. But other than that, you got to look abroad. That's going to do it for the Corner Kick. It's been absolutely great to be with you. Here's hoping the Pittsburgh Riverhounds have another great signing for us next week. They're always giving us something good right now, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. We come out the year 3 shows, and it's just been like Riverhounds. We're leading off with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. And we always talk about their results, and that just gets kind of droning after a while, where it's like, well, the next 6 games are going to be Charleston and this. I like the offseason discussion better, because I can break down the match in 5 or 7 minutes, whatever it is, and then what am I going to talk about? I got to fill this air with the Riverhounds, and we start talking about what's coming up and games and stuff. This is more fun, where I could say, hey, in the last week, hey, we had Griffin, now we got Dane Kelly. This offense is really going places. So again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll have the Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report coming your way on Wednesday. Coach Krzyzewski and myself, we're going to celebrate the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's right. They have done it somehow. The Pittsburgh Steelers have backed their way into the playoffs. And we did it on the Polka Show, powered by the Polish Falcons. Of course, we'd like to thank the Polish Falcons for their support of Three Rivers Broadcasting, as well as all of our fine sponsors. You can visit our website, threeriversbroadcasting.com, for a full list of them. But again, we'd like to thank the Guard Market, Report It, Gym Rat Performance Training, Lawrence Repair, Paul Down the Hall, Pennsylvania Football News, Steel City Grease Traps, Carnegie Ironworks, Mother Mercy Academy, Waste Management, Polish Falcons America, Quick Trip IV, as well as our newest sponsor, Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio. We're going to be producing this week in Franciscan basketball the remainder of the season. We're going to be airing Franciscan men's and some women's basketball games here on Three Rivers Broadcasting. Great partnership that we're very proud to be announcing, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about that on Wednesday. We're going to be going to interview Coach Wallace on Friday for the very first edition of This Week in Franciscan Basketball. We hope this is the beginning of a very long and mutually beneficial relationship between us and Franciscan out there in Steubenville. So if you are looking to send your children to a fantastic Catholic college, a traditional, real, honest-to-God Catholic college that's still doing it the right way, consider strongly Franciscan University in Steubenville, our newest partner here at Three Rivers Broadcasting. Thank you very much for tuning in. And like I said, we did this on the Polka Show. We've got to end it one way because the Steelers have backed their way into the playoffs. We're going back to the year 1978. This man was the owner of the former WZUM radio station in Carnegie, Pennsylvania. Jimmy Pohl was his handle. And he recorded the Pittsburgh Steeler polka. And I know it's a soccer show, but the Steelers are in the playoffs. And we got to get there. Join us on Wednesday for the Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report, 8 o'clock. Coach Krzyzewski and myself, and, well, maybe the truth as well. Go Steelers!
Get them Steelers, Bradshaw and Rocky and Franco and Lee. We love you, Pittsburgh Steelers. It's been many years in coming. Just keep that Steeler machinery humming. Best of all, Mean Joe, do your thing against the other team. He stopped from year to year. We're so glad he's playing here. Now join with me and sing the Steelers cheer. We're from the town with a great football team.